Martin, how are things?
Fine, fine.
Anyway, what we have here today, or rather this Sunday, is Luke 5, 1 to 11. So Jesus goes fishing, or rather instructs others to go fishing. So tell us a little bit about your thinking on this.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? So in the end of this passage, we've got the call of the first disciples in Luke's Gospel. So we've got the call of Simon and then James and John. And it comes at a different point, a slightly later point than it does in Matthew and Mark. So Matthew and Mark, Jesus calls the disciples at the beginning of his ministry. At this point, his ministry is underway. He launched it in the synagogue, and then he's been ministering, and it's only when the kind of pattern, as it were, has been established that he calls people to assist him. And the way Luke, in absolute classic evocative narrative form, portrays it, we understand that the reason Jesus needs to call assistance is because the crowd is pressing in on him. So
it's too big for one man.
Too big for one man. And I think, first of all, it strikes me that we come up with all sorts of reasons for thinking that people should be called to this ministry or that ministry. But actually, it's because the real reason that we need to be doing that is because the crowd is pressing in. And do we recognise the crowd pressing in? So that for me was a really helpful insight. But then as you follow the narrative through, so Jesus asks if he can get in the boat so he can teach the people from the shore, so he's not kind of, I guess, pushed into the water, and he does that. And then we've got Simon saying, I haven't been able to catch any fish all night, and Jesus says, let's go out and get some fish. And Simon's thinking, my goodness, he's not a fisherman. Why on earth are we going out in the middle of daylight to get fish? This is a hopeless exercise. They go out, of course, their nets are full. They come back, they have to get the partners in to help. Partners turn out to be James and John. And Jesus then says, you will now be, and he doesn't say fishers of men. The Greek is different here. Because it's almost as if Luke figures out, well, when you catch fish, what do you want them to do is die. So the phrase is something like netting people. So there's really, it's the same word that's used for capturing an animal that you want to keep alive. So it's keeping people alive for life. And I'm just struck, first of all, that it's in the middle of the story that Simon comes to this recognition that he is a sinner, and this is in response to the awe of the miracle of the full nets of fish, and it's at that point that he kind of recognizes who he truly is, that the call comes. And so just in the dynamics of our own lives, you and I would both be able to say that it's at that point, those points of deepest kind of honesty about ourselves, that we hear God's call to us. And I think that's one powerful dynamic which I think is really important for us. I should say I owe that insight to Brendan Byrne, in his little book, The Hospitality of God, which is a really good little commentary on Luke. But then I'm just struck, and again, Byrne points this out, but there are some subtle shifts of words, as well as having, netting people rather than fishing them. You've got the point at which, at that point of realization, Simon suddenly becomes Simon Peter. And so all of the anticipation of Simon being the one upon whom the church would be founded, and of course, Byrne again points out the boat. By the time that Luke's congregation are hearing this, they will recognise the boat as a symbol of the church.
Mm.
And then the other shift is Jesus moves from being master to Lord.
Mm.
So you've got that recognition, and of course we know this story in another form, a post-resurrection experience of Simon Peter with in John's Gospel. So it's almost as if we've got this anticipation, this looking forward to the resurrection and experiencing it now, right at the beginning of Jesus's call of those who are going to assist him. So we are called to assist him in the light of the resurrection. So I just think it's a wonderful example of Luke just drawing out through subtle uses of words and shifts and phrases and so forth, and the way he tells the story, of just kind of taking us deep into the dynamics of God's life with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a few little minor comments, really, to add to your fulsome explanation of the passage, Martin.
This feels like I've just written an essay and you're going to put a few comments in the margin with red ink. I'm just waiting for it now.
No, so I suppose one of the ways of coming at it is, as you have done, which is the calling of Peter here, Simon Peter, and that shift of language that you notice, master to Lord. I wonder if originally he isn't being sarcastic with Jesus to begin with, because this is the first time it's recorded that we see Jesus. And Jesus has asked them to do something that fishermen, as you say, know is just absurd, to cast out your nets in the middle of the lake in daylight. Well, for a start, the fish would see it because the nets are visible in daylight. Secondly, the fish would be hiding under stones and come out at night. And thirdly, the fish would be round the edges of the lake where the tributaries with all the oxygen are kind of like there, rather than in the middle of the lake. So
I didn't know you knew anything about fishing.
I know a little bit about fishing, and therefore, you know, he'd be thinking, absolutely ridiculous. So, okay, master, like that. I'm wondering if he's speaking like that to him, almost. And then, gobsmackingly, takes in all this load that needs both boats, with James and John in the other one. So now he's won the jackpot. Well, you know, I've been a fisherman all my life, Simon Peter, and, you know, I've always wanted a big catch, and here it is. But instead, he is captured by this guy who seems to know how reality works and seems also to have some sort of authority over reality by the sounds of things. So it's almost as if his original kind of like desires as a fisherman are given a sense of scale, and he is humbled by the limited nature, perhaps even, of his original desiring in the presence of this one who clearly isn't that bothered about the fact he's just won a jackpot of fish and is about to stroll on, and says to, you know, so he says, Lord, depart from me, for I'm a sinful man. He gets that there is something about this man that has authority in this realm. And Jesus, of course, then calls him to follow him, which is not something, it can sound alien to us, can't it? But in the culture of the day, following a rabbi for a time was something that was entirely of the culture.
And I'm just reflecting on what you've just said there with the jackpot image. I mean, the interesting thing is that there's no sense that Simon decides, oh, well, if I can catch this many fish, I'll keep at this. It's a good deal being a fisherman. Or if that fleeting thought goes through his mind, Jesus's call to him to do something completely different is so compelling that he puts it out of his mind.
And which precisely raises the question for us about who and what we are following. Simon Peter has been utterly changed around by this engagement, in that no longer is he following whoever it was before who happened to be a good fisherman. Not that there's anything wrong with being a good fisherman, by the way, but to actually following Jesus. And one of the questions for us in terms of vocation and calling is to ask ourselves quite soberly, who and what is it we're following? Because we are inevitably, all of us, imitators. Even if we're original, we're only original on the basis of a tradition and following others. And it's quite a sobering thought to stop and think for yourself, maybe I am a combination of following, I don't know, Nietzsche and John Locke and Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber, or whoever it is, you know.
It's a very odd mixture.
Well, but purposefully so, because when you stop and you think, where are these ideas and these stories that I've got in my mind that are shaping my deciding and my desiring? And is this a good idea? And it's remarkable how little we do pause and stop, or are stopped in our tracks by someone or some encounter or experience that sobers us up and makes us reconsider. Am I really following the right way here, the way that is flourishing? And that's precisely what you see in Simon Peter, it seems to me. That his initial thought is, you know, oh dear, the light of Jesus has really exposed the smallness of my vision and my following. But actually, the encouragement of Jesus in response is, come follow me. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. So we need to watch out for miracles.
Absolutely.